Welcome everyone. John Coleman here to Tea and Mortgage, episode number 2.
Hey everyone, this is Norm Schriever, your co-host with Tea and Mortgage. Thanks so much for listening. Thanks so much for the support and the response for episode number 1. And we have a fun episode for you today. All right, John, now we're shifting to talking about the property market. And there in Ireland, of course, most people, a good number of people live in Dublin, and it's definitely got the most expensive, hottest property market. But sometimes people move elsewhere, whether it's for a job or to be in the countryside or a smaller city, or just because of property prices are more favorable. So what do you see? What's your advice for folks, whether they should live in Dublin or look elsewhere?
That's a great question, Norm. Now, it's shifted in the last couple of years since COVID came on board, and given the ability to work from home is now taken on board, and it's now within Irish legislation a right to ask to work from home if you so wish. Right, doesn't have to be granted, but you have a right to ask. And some companies, mine own included, are very, very favorable to it. Others have gone back the way of actually wanting to get people back into the office, but given that ability of not having to work from home, there is a lot of logic to buying a home outside of Dublin. Purely, as you mentioned, from a price point of view, you're going to get better value for your pound or euro or dollar or whatever. But you get my point. So, but ultimately, and I would say this to everyone, there's no right or wrong answer about where you should live. Right? It's all about what you want for your own life. But from a value point of view, there's absolute significant sense in actually looking outside of Dublin, because for that very, very reason, you can get cheaper houses that you might be happy to live in, or areas you'd be happy to live in, but just outside of Dublin. So if it was me advising someone who asked me that question, I'd say explore all options, but keep in mind when you're buying a home, it's not just for price. There are a number of different options. Like where your family, your network of support, you've got kids. So there's a lot of factors that need to be taken into account. But if you were just looking at the kind of value for money, well, God, yes, it makes a lot of sense. But normally you would have factored in, how commutable is it to work? But that has been taken out off the table a little bit with the ability to work from home. So that is another reason that you potentially would move outside of Dublin, you know?
Yeah, that's good advice. And there's definitely other lifestyle factors, but and then if the price is right, but you have to think ahead 3 years, 5 years, 10 years. Do I still want to be here? Yeah,
and that's the same like for any people, whether they're Irish, whether they're people coming from outside of Ireland and they're coming in to live, and they're just in the country, and some of them within 6-12 months are trying to buy a home, and they don't know, they think they should be buying where they're living, and that might be one of the most expensive parts of Dublin. So, because, my job is to help you get the money, but your job is to ultimately find a home that you will happily see yourself in for the foreseeable future, and you need to factor all these things in, you know.
Great. Yeah, good advice. Thank you, John. All right, John, now you have an update for us about the mortgage market, and you're seeing a bit of a chasm between what was announced and what is theory that's going to help buyers and what may actually be reality.
Yeah, no, this is really important information, Norm, based on the expectation. The central bank before Christmas came out and announced to everyone that the banks could lend 4 times salary, which seemed like a lot of very, very good news. We're now the end of January, and basically the banks have not taken on board the central bank's new policies. They basically gone, we might lend to certain people 4 times, but not everyone. They are basically being very selective around this, because banks have in the past got themselves into trouble for over lending, and I think they're now more worried about risk than they are about making profit, which is unusual from a bank's point of view. But they're more worried about lending to people who, with the way the interest rates are going, that they may not be able to meet the repayment. So they're taking care of people where in the past they would have been guilty and they were charged with lending recklessly. So they're now not doing that. But the effect that's having is that, well, there's a couple of effects. One is that people who thought they might be getting more money aren't getting more money. So what I thought might happen at the start of this year, there might be a little bit of a spike in prices because all these people would have extra money to borrow. That may not happen. So with interest rates going up and banks not lending as much as they go, I don't see the prices in any way, shape, or form going up at this moment in time. I still would be of the view that they will remain similar, okay, purely because the gap between supply and demand is so great, right?
Yeah.
So I would see them remaining similar. But the other thing that people need to keep in mind, and this is really, really important, is that with rates going up, they might qualify for a certain amount of money today by being able to show the bank that their rent and their savings is X. But if they wait 3 or 6 months, if the rates have gone up, the banks might say, well, actually, you can't meet these new repayments because you haven't done it in the last. So it's really, really important that people actually look at where rates might be in basically 6 months' time, right? And at this point, I'm giving people advice of, well, if rates went up by another 2%, this is what your repayments would be, okay? So can you prove for the next 6 months that you can do that? So that's the advice I'm giving people. And I do think it's really, really important that while they want people want to buy their home, they do need to be factoring in, well, they've a life to live as well, and they've a life to basically pay for. You don't want 45% of your income going on paying a mortgage. So they need to take that piece of information into account, and that kind of the roadmap that I would give people basically shows them that, so that they can make sure that they're not doing something that's really against their best long-term interest,
All right, John, on the TN Mortgage podcast now, we're going to talk a little bit about the roadmap that you just mentioned in your monthly recap of the property market. And you do a great job educating buyers and leading them along this roadmap, which is not only your advice and guidance, but you actually have a great PDF of a roadmap and videos of a roadmap that you could present to people. So tell us about that.
Yes, no, well, as you know from our many times talking together, my view on this, my role is as an educator and then as a facilitator. So our role really is to help people get themselves ready. So when I start a conversation with people, or when we get information from people, we're all about finding out where they're at, where they want to get to, and what they need to do to get what they want, okay? And you don't wake up overnight and are ready to buy a house. It's a journey, okay? So that's why the term roadmap, we came up with that term roadmap, because it is a roadmap. It's about, okay, well, what do I want to achieve? Where am I at? And what are the steps I need to take to get there, okay? So there's a number of factors involved in a mortgage, right? So the first one is, right, well, the price of the house, obviously, okay? Then the next thing is basically, well, how much of a deposit am I going to need together? And then, well, I suppose the most important part of it is repaying it, okay? But then ultimately, how much the bank's prepared to give you, okay? So that's with that, when we get all that level of information, we will present to the clients, A, what they need to bring to get the deal, or what extra they may need to come up with. B, what the banks are prepared to lend to them, okay? And that's really, really important. And then ultimately, what they need to do to show the banks that they can meet what the banks are prepared to lend them. So there's a number of different factors that need to be factored in, that before the banks will say yes. It's not just a case of, oh, we're both earning X, the bank should lend us Y. It doesn't work like that. It's a case of, that's the first thing they look at. They look at incomes and they go, okay, in theory, we will lend you this. But if you're not doing X, Y, and Z, we won't, right? So you need to know what X, Y, and Z are to make sure that when you're ready to put an application in, that you tick all the boxes in effect. So that in effect is what our roadmap is and does. And it's something, as I say, you could be ready in 3 months, you could be ready in 6 months, we could be ready in a year's time. Our role is in educating our customers to get them to the point whereby they're ready. And then hopefully they'll then be ready or happy for us to represent them with the banks and then just facilitate it. Because ultimately that's the exciting part, when the banks have said yes, and then you go out and buy a home and you need someone to manage the process to ultimately get to the point whereby you're getting the keys to your house,
Yeah, so that's wonderful. And it's also, and I know this from buying a home for the first time many years ago, and seeing so many home buyers too in the business. It's so scary, it's so confusing, it's so overwhelming. You start, reading bits and pieces of these different blogs and seeing videos and hearing different advice, and you just become so overwhelmed. And so it's wonderful to have a roadmap in one place that's like, this step and then this step and then this step.
No, you're absolutely right. And what a lot of people make is they talk to their friends about it, who give them snippets of information, and snippets of information are almost more damaging than no information at all, because you get a little piece of information and you create the whole picture from it, and you go, well, this is the case, this is what I should be able to do, right? So I often say to people, yes, no harm in listening to others, but pick one source as your trusted source of correct information, because buying a home is emotional, and if you get bad information, you can waste a lot of time and a lot of energy and end up being very, very disappointed, So
yeah, that's great advice. And where can people get this roadmap from you?
A number of different places. They can email me, probably the easiest, john@jcmortgages.ie, and I can send them some information that I'll need from them, or we can arrange a call, whatever works best.
Yeah, that's wonderful. And I know you have, not only a roadmap, a graphic, but things written out. And then also you have videos explaining the different processes and steps, because, different folks are more comfortable with different information sources. So, but yeah, it all starts out at john@jcmortgages.ie. All right, John, we just talked about your roadmap to owning property or buying property in Ireland and how helpful that is for folks. But you also want to educate people to save them from themselves, essentially, because a lot of people, especially first-time property buyers, make some really big mistakes that could set them back. So tell us about some of these biggest mistakes you see people making.
Well, yeah, as I mentioned earlier, one of them is getting little pieces of information from friends and taking that as gospel, in effect, going, well, my friend got this is what I should be able to do. And that leads to bad information. It leads to false expectations, and it leads to disappointment, right?
Yeah.
So that would be one thing I would always caution people on, where get one trusted source of information rather than someone who's been through it, but as an individual they'll never tell you the full story. You'll get little pieces of information from a friend, but you're never going to get the complete picture. I often get clients saying, oh, my friend got X amount of money and he's similar to me. And I'm going, well, I don't know your friend's information, but there's got to be something different, because banks don't operate. They work off the same information. So little pieces of information is very, very dangerous. The other piece of information, one of the biggest mistakes I get making people, is, believe it or not, it's one of the things we need to show the bank is what is an ability to repay. That's fundamentally really, really important. And they might think they're saving €1,000 a month, and basically 1,000 goes out of their account every single month. But during the month, they take 500 of it out, right? To cover other expenses. And they keep saying, well, I'm still saving €1,000. Well, actually, you're not. The bank will only view that as someone whose account has only gone up by 500 every month. So being fully aware of what you're actually doing is something that would be like, we don't all know our accounts to the cent. But in relation to showing a bank that you can meet your payments, it's really, really important that on a month-by-month basis that your savings are going up, or if you happen to be paying rent, it's going out of your bank account, because some people pay rent to the landlord in cash, which there's no track record there. So it's really, really important that you either, on a month-by-month basis, the rent goes directly out of your bank account, or if you have to withdraw it, make sure you're withdrawing the exact same amount every month, so you can pinpoint it on your bank statement that this is rent. So they'd be kind of the two big ones that I would think of straight off the bat.
Yeah.
Basically, don't listen to little pieces of information. I know that might sound strange thing to say, because all information could be deemed as good information as if you're educating yourself, but get all your information from one source would be my recommendation. And then from a repayment point of view, make sure that your accounts are going up, or that the rent is actually going out of your bank account. Because what you don't want is that you're earning enough money, but because you can't show the banks on paper that you can do this, you're going to have to go away and wait until you can do that, you know?
Yeah, that's great advice. And with the first one, with where you get your information, you know, we always joke around and say, don't go to your brother's friends, cousins, next door neighbors, car mechanics, barber for information, right? And
your taxi man as well there.
Yeah, throw the taxi man in there.
Yeah.
And, you know, you could think of it like this, you know, if you're not feeling well and something is wrong, are you going to go to WebMD and start Googling symptoms, or are you going to actually go to the doctor who's going to take care of you?
I don't want to compare myself to a doctor now, but yeah, the point is very valid. And it is a case of get your description or get your prescription from a reliable source who's in effect going to show you exactly what you need to do. And yes, you could make the analogy with the doctor, but I'm not claiming to be one.
So yeah, maybe we'll start this instead of the mortgage king, the mortgage doctor. Are you more comfortable with that?
Okay, I would, if I'd go down a route, probably the teacher. My mum was a teacher, and I've always, if I didn't do this, I would have liked to be a teacher. So maybe we could work something on that angle, Norm.
That's nice. That actually fits you better, huh? The mortgage educator or something, huh?
Yeah, but not in a brash American way. Now we need to be very humble about it. Okay.
Of course. I'm a humility expert. You know, I'm the best at humility. All right. Thanks, John. All right, John. So I know you're a big tennis fan. It's a sport that you love and you love watching. And so you have this weekend, you were busy watching one of your favorite tennis players of all time, huh?
I was indeed, Norm. Now, I'm kind of reticent to actually mention his name because he's a controversial figure. And I'm hoping I don't lose clients by saying I'm a big fan of Novak Djokovic. I'm actually going to tell you a funny story around that, actually. Back in 2014, I went to see him play in Wimbledon, right? I queued up at 6 o'clock in the morning to get into Wimbledon. Then I joined another queue to get into center court at Wimbledon, right? Then when I got into the end of an Andy Murray match, but I didn't get into all of them. As soon as Andy Murray finished, basically everyone left. So I thought, let's go and get myself a better seat here. So I went down, and I'm sitting in this very good spot, and I could see actually some famous people. I don't know if you know Richard Branson, a couple of local really famous people near me. This is a great place, right? So Novak was playing a French guy called Tsonga, and it was a great match. And then at the end of the first set, someone came over to me, kind of dressed in a uniform. He was a Royal Guard, and he turned around and said to me, "Sorry, sir, are you a member here?" I went, "No, what are you talking about?" I was in the Royal Box, Norm.
Oh, a little out of place. Huh?
I politely got asked to leave. Richard Branson didn't come to my rescue, mind you. But anyway, sorry, there's my dedication to Novak, that level of queuing up to see him play. But at the weekend, having last year been sent home in ignominy, having been deported and locked up for a week, he goes back a year later, having been allowed back in, and goes and wins the tournament. It's an incredible sporting story, even if you don't like the guy. And he has some strange views. I wouldn't suggest don't get vaccinated, but he doesn't believe in that. So, but as a tennis player and a guy who I just think is really interesting, he speaks 8 different languages, Norm. Like, wow, for a guy who, and I just found him very funny and entertaining. So yes, he would be one of my sporting heroes, and it was a good weekend. No,
that's wonderful. Where's he from originally, I'm wondering?
Serbia. He grew up basically in the middle of a war with bombs dropping around his house. It's an incredible story where he's come from. And he's an incredible sportsman as well. So
all right, John, we talked about tennis, which is a solo sport, unless you're playing doubles, but mortgage is actually a team sport. And you always impress this upon me that you have a wonderful team working hard behind the scenes to help your clients. So I know you wanted to give them a little shine, a little love today on the podcast.
Oh, absolutely, Norm. Without them, I don't think I'd be sane at this point, to be brutally truthful with them. They make this all possible. I suppose the number one person on my team that I'd have to go straight to announce is Soya. She's been with me for her sins for 7 years in March. Can you believe that?
Wow.
7 years. And she has grown incredibly from when she first started with me. She's now like, she came in to support me. She's from Brazil, and she's now the mortgage broker, the only mortgage broker in Ireland dealing with all the Brazilians. And there's a lot of Brazilians who are now actually settling here in Ireland, and she literally is the only person doing it. So, and I'd say she's more known in Ireland in her own community than I am, and she's only been here for 7 years. So, but her level of loyalty to me is phenomenal. I as I say, I don't actually have the right words to describe her.
That's wonderful. Yeah.
So the next person who's been with me for the longest period of time is Debra, or Debs as I call her, and she's been with me now for over 3 years. She is excellent. She's one of the funniest people I've ever worked with, and she just keeps me sane a lot of the time. We just have such a laugh together when we're being serious, but we can still. I'm a big believer in this is a really serious business. You're dealing with people's dreams, getting their home, but at the same time, we all live our lives on a day-to-day basis, and you need to have you need to be able to laugh along the way as well. So, Deborah really brings a smile to my face every time we talk, and she is very, very, very. She just makes things happen quickly, which I love. And of course, there's others in my team that I would be wrong of me not to mention. Gladzy, who's been with me for 2.5 years, working from Brazil, but she's actually coming to Ireland at the end of March. So I'm looking forward to having her on board in the country. And David and Linda, who have been, God, they're both in the business for over 30 years and are literally come on board since July of last year, but are bringing a wealth of knowledge and expertise to our overall team.
That's great. You have a heck of a team there, and I know you do a lot of good things, not only for people in Dublin and Ireland, but people coming from Brazil or Canada or US or Poland or a bunch of different countries. And so you're doing something right.
Norm, I got a phone call today from an American who was listening to the podcast that you did with me. I think it's 2 years ago now when I went.
At least.
When you interviewed me for your show on the American, there's a website for American, what's the word? I'm having a freeze. And for Americans that come to live in Ireland, what's the word?
Expatriates.
Expats. God, I can't believe
all good.
Word. So, with expats, and that my name is out there thanks to you, in fairness. So, I got a phone call from an American guy who literally only in Ireland six months, and thought, who should I get in touch with? Put the question out there to the American community, and got my name back from a number of different people. So I have you to thank for that.
Oh, wonderful. Hey,
so I was thanking my team there. I now need to thank you for helping me do so well.
No worries. A very, very, very small part of your success. And it's honestly been wonderful to work with you, and we've become friends. And that's why we wanted to do this podcast here. So thank you, John. I appreciate that.
No. Gratitude where gratitude is due, mate. I view you as an integral part of my team. So don't ever forget that.
Wonderful. Well, now that's enough emotion for one podcast. I'm going to go cry and write you a nice
make it happen
Valentine's
someday.
Day card. You know.
Yeah. No. That's steady on here. Steady on.
All right, John. Now on the Tea and Mortgage podcast, we're going to talk about other culinary fare, including your favorite restaurants in all of Dublin. So tell us about some of your favorite restaurants, and I think you have a funny story for us as well.
I do indeed. Well, I'm going to start with I wouldn't be the most sophisticated of restaurant goers, shall we call it, but there's one restaurant in Dublin called the Elephant and Castle that do the most amazing chicken wings you can ever taste. And I have a bit of addiction to chicken wings, and they would be the number one chicken wing place in Dublin. And if I ever meet any people who are coming into Ireland, I would always tell them to go to this restaurant and tell them I've sent them there. But there is a story around. I would go to this restaurant maybe once, twice a week. Once a week, twice a month type thing. And basically, I was eating my chicken wings and reading a newspaper article. And now on the table there was a candle. Okay, and then suddenly I looked down at my paper and it was on fire. Okay. Now, my instinct reaction was, okay, fire. how do I get rid of a fire? I was thinking back thinking back to when I was a child and I was blowing out candles, right? So I started to blow at the paper.
Oh no, wrong thing to do.
Yeah, absolutely. So then one of the girls came running, when the waitresses came running over, and had to pour a whole bottle of water all over the paper. And then all the other people sitting down started clapping, and I was absolutely mortified. Now, I did highlight a health and safety issue, and the next time I went back, they had changed the candles, by the way. But yeah, it doesn't get away from my moment of stupidity. But sure, you have to.
That's hilarious. So talk about hot wings, huh?
Absolutely, but still, Elephant and Castle, Temple Bar, it's the place to be.
Oh, that's great.
I'm not on, by the way, I'm not on commission for recommending the place. They just are amazing.
And if there's no more candles on the table, you ruined the romantic ambiance they had, huh?
Yeah, blame me. I'll take that on the chin.
Well, I'll tell you what, I love chicken wings. My God, they're best thing ever. But I didn't know there was a chicken wing scene there in Dublin. So that's good.
There's articles about the top 10 restaurants to have chicken wings. It's kind of it's a very, very what's the word? Like you could spend every weekend going to a different place to have quality chicken wings. But I haven't quite got to that stage yet. I'm very loyal, so I stick to the one and only place that I go to.
Yeah, shout out to the Elephant and Castle, and maybe they'll hear this and maybe they'll become a sponsor and we'll get free chicken wings for life. You know, I dare to dream.
I like that thinking. Right, well, that's it, folks. Thanks a million for listening again. If you want to get in touch with me, well, my email address again is john@jcmortgages.ie, and I'm willing to answer any questions that you may have. If not, well, hopefully we'll hear you all next month.
Absolutely. Thanks everyone for listening, subscribing, and supporting the T and Mortgage podcast with John Coleman. See you next month.